Hello, my friend. I'm truly glad you've decided to watch this video, and if you click that subscribe button, you'll make me even happier. Let's get into it. My name is Andrew. I'm 38 years old, and this is the story of the night I caught my wife at a party I had specifically told her not to attend, wearing almost nothing. What followed was something she never dreamed could happen. I met Hannah not long after we both finished college and stepped into our first full-time jobs in Chicago. She was everything I wasn't: impulsive, social, and the kind of person who seemed to know someone in every place we visited. I was more reserved, content with Netflix marathons and takeout dinners, but she drew out a side of me I hadn't realized existed. At gatherings, Hannah's presence lit up the room. Within 20 minutes, she could charm half the guests into feeling like old friends. There was, however, one thing about her I learned quickly. Alcohol affected her more than most. 2 drinks would make her tipsy, 3 would strip away her filter, and 4 would push her into choices she'd regret by morning. I first discovered this about 6 months into dating her, during a birthday party for her co-worker Priya. I'd stepped out for just a few minutes to use the restroom, and when I came back, Hannah was sitting on the kitchen counter, trying to imitate a TikTok dance. I helped her down as she giggled, asking why everyone was watching. She didn't realize the scene she'd caused until the next morning. When I showed her a video someone had posted to Instagram, the color drained from her face. She deactivated all her social media for a week and barely left our apartment. That episode led to our first serious talk about her drinking. Hannah wasn't an alcoholic, nothing like that. In fact, she could easily go weeks without touching alcohol. But when she did start drinking in a social setting, her judgment seemed to disappear. We agreed she could keep her active social life, but she'd stick to non-alcoholic drinks, club soda with lime, Diet Coke, things like that. It wasn't a big sacrifice for her. She cared more about people and conversation than about booze itself. And for the next 2 years, that arrangement worked perfectly. In September 2019, just before the pandemic disrupted everything, we got married in a small, intimate ceremony. That first year as husband and wife was exactly what you'd expect for newlyweds confined to a 1-bedroom apartment during lockdown. We binged entire TV series, mastered complicated recipes, and had conversations so deep that some couples never have them in decades. When the world reopened in 2021, Hannah was eager to make up for lost time. After more than a year of isolation, her schedule filled quickly. Delayed birthdays, new bars, long postponed girls' nights. Meanwhile, my career hit a demanding peak. I'd started as a junior developer at a fintech startup, but by 2021, I was leading a 6-person team on a project that could decide the company's future. The workload was relentless, and some nights I came home too mentally exhausted to speak. Hannah invited me to join her outings, but I was often either buried in work or recovering from it. The first sign of trouble came in March 2022, when she went to her friend Zoe's bachelorette party. A full-day affair that began with brunch and ended at a nightclub I'd never even heard of. Late that evening, while I was working, my phone buzzed with Instagram tags. The first clip showed Hannah at a rooftop bar with a group of women tossing back shots. She wore a bright red top and was clearly tipsy. The second showed her dancing on a chair while strangers cheered. The third made my stomach clench. A man I didn't know was standing behind her at the bar, his hands on her waist as he helped her down from something. They were both laughing, and his hands lingered far too long. I must have replayed that moment 20 times. She didn't come home until nearly 4 in the morning. When I tried to bring it up the next day, she was too hungover to focus. By Monday night, I showed her the videos. She broke down crying, insisting that Zoe had pushed for a celebratory shot that spiraled into several more. By the time she realized how drunk she was already making bad decisions. She swore nothing happened beyond what I'd seen, and I believed her. But her broken promise about drinking, and the fact that some stranger felt comfortable touching her, stayed with me for weeks. We had a long conversation about trust and boundaries. Hannah apologized repeatedly, promising to be more cautious and to let her friends know her limits. For most of 2023, it seemed like she had followed through. My project launched successfully, and though I was still busy, my work week eased to about 50 to 55 hours. Hannah's social outings dropped to just a couple of times a month, always with the same friends and always alcohol-free. Then, in March, she mentioned her friend Kelsey's upcoming 30th birthday. Later, I spotted the party flyer on Instagram. It was for a Saturday night house party, tagged adults only, with the Facebook tagline, "What happens here, stays here." Hannah hadn't mentioned that part. Kelsey was the single one in her group, always chasing the wildest clubs and craziest nights. She wasn't malicious, but she had a way of dragging that old, reckless energy out of Hannah. As the date drew closer, Hannah brought it up again one Wednesday night. I told her honestly that I was concerned, reminding her of the Bachelorette incident and how quickly parties like that could spiral. I suggested she take Kelsey to a nice dinner instead, something calmer. To my surprise, Hannah agreed. She said she'd been thinking the same thing, admitting she might be outgrowing the whole house party phase. She told me she wanted to start acting more like a married woman than someone still living in her early 20s. Hearing her say that left me both relieved and proud that she'd reached that decision on her own. By the time Friday rolled around, Hannah returned from work with an entirely different energy than usual. She told me she'd spoken with Kelsey earlier that day, and their conversation had left her feeling conflicted. Kelsey, she explained, was hurt that Hannah wouldn't be at her birthday celebration. While Kelsey claimed she understood that being married brought new responsibilities, she had still hoped her oldest friend would at least show up to say happy birthday in person. That struck a chord with Hannah. The two of them had been inseparable since their teenage years, and Kelsey had even stood beside her as maid of honor at our wedding. Hannah couldn't bear the thought of looking like the kind of friend who disappeared once a ring was on her finger. Trying to strike a middle ground, Hannah proposed a solution. She would attend the party, but only if I accompanied her. This way, she explained, I could help her keep the night in check, making sure she didn't overdrink or stay out too late. Her plan was to make a quick appearance, give Kelsey her birthday wishes, and leave early with me by her side. The idea of spending my Saturday night at a crowded house party was the last thing I wanted. Work had already pushed me to my limits that week. I was racing to meet a looming deadline as head of my company's IT department, and I was running on almost no energy. Any free time I managed to get, I used to recharge. I told Hannah as kindly as possible that I was too drained to be enjoyable company, and if I did go, my obvious impatience would probably sour the mood. I suggested she find another way to make amends with Kelsey without actually attending the party. That's when her expression hardened, and she fired back almost instantly. She accused me of being selfish with my own time while trying to dictate how she spent hers. According to her, I was making it unnecessarily difficult for her to keep her friendships alive, effectively cutting her off from the people who mattered most to her. It wasn't how I saw myself at all. I never believed I was controlling. In my mind, I was drawing on past experiences and setting healthy boundaries for our marriage. Still, hearing her put it that way made me question my own intentions. I tried to make her understand this wasn't about control. It was about being cautious. We had dealt with similar parties before, and the outcome had been far from good. I didn't want to see history repeat itself. But Hannah wasn't buying it. She called me paranoid and insecure, accusing me of punishing her for something that had happened over a year earlier, something she had already apologized for and promised wouldn't happen again. The conversation kept circling without resolution for almost an hour. Eventually, I said what I should have said from the beginning, that I wasn't comfortable with her going to this particular gathering because of who would be there and the nature of the event, and that if she went anyway, it would feel like she was breaking the trust we'd worked so hard to rebuild after the bachelorette party incident. Hannah held my gaze for several seconds before dismissing me as ridiculous. She reminded me she was an adult, perfectly capable of making her own decisions about her friends, and argued that if I couldn't trust her to attend a simple birthday party, our marriage had deeper issues than I wanted to admit. Without another word, she left the room, and we didn't speak for the rest of the evening. The following morning was thick with unspoken tension. Hannah brewed coffee but didn't pour me a cup. I made breakfast and set a plate in front of her, but she refused it. We moved around the apartment like two strangers sharing a hallway, each trying not to cross the other's path. Around midday, I mentioned I was going to visit a friend who lived nearby. She didn't respond. I left with the quiet hope, maybe a naive one, that she wouldn't go against my wishes while I was gone. That afternoon, my friend and I spent hours catching up, our conversation wandering from work issues to family updates. When I returned home around 6:30 p.m., the sky already fading into darkness, the apartment was empty. My chest tightened. I called Hannah and she picked up, telling me she'd gone out to dinner with her sister Melissa because I had left her alone, and Melissa needed someone to talk to about her relationship problems. She mentioned they might catch a movie afterward and be out late. When I asked where they were eating, she said they hadn't decided yet, probably somewhere downtown. But her words had the careful, deliberate cadence of a rehearsed line. Each answer sounded like something chosen in advance, not spoken naturally in the moment. I didn't confront her, clinging to the fragile hope that I might be wrong. I tried getting back to my work, but I couldn't focus. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for a message from her. By 9 o'clock, nothing. At 9:30, I sent a text. Hope you and Melissa are having a nice dinner. Love you. No reply. At 10:15, I called her, but it went straight to voicemail, meaning she had turned off her phone. That was the instant I knew she wasn't with her sister. One thought immediately came to mind. Her car still had the GPS tracker we'd installed as a security measure, one I had personally configured and linked to my phone. I opened the app. Within minutes, I was dressed in jeans and a hoodie, keys in hand, heading toward the blinking marker on the map. I needed to see for myself exactly what kind of party she had chosen over the trust in our marriage. The tracker's location wasn't a restaurant or a theater. It led me to a narrow 2-story house squeezed between two others, with a small strip of lawn out front and stairs leading up to a covered porch. The windows all glowed brightly, music and laughter spilling into the night air. A few people loitered on the porch, smoking and talking loudly, while a steady flow of guests moved through the propped-open front door. It was the sort of event where anyone could walk in without question. I parked across the street, got out, and went straight inside without anyone stopping me. The living room was packed. People dancing, yelling over the music, and chatting in small, tight circles. The noise was so intense you had to lean in close to hear anyone speak. I searched the crowd slowly, scanning every face, but saw no sign of Hannah. The dim lights and constant movement made it hard to be certain. I pushed on toward the kitchen. More people, more drinks, more noise, but still no Hannah. I described her to a woman standing nearby, asking if she'd seen her. She said she thought she'd spotted someone like that heading toward the bathroom at the back of the house. Following her directions, I moved through the kitchen into a short hallway where 3 women stood in line for the bathroom, each with a drink in hand. Hannah wasn't one of them. The woman at the front of the line noticed me lingering and asked if I was waiting my turn. I told her I was looking for my wife. Her face shifted into confusion. It was clear she hadn't realized anyone here was married. I went over Hannah's description again, and after a moment's hesitation, the woman gave a slight nod. She thought she'd seen someone matching that look, though not recently, and suggested I try upstairs. The staircase stood near the front entrance of the house. I took it slowly, uncertain of what I might be walking into. The second floor was noticeably quieter than the noise and movement below, though it was by no means empty. Voices floated from more than one room. The hallway held 4 doors, 2 open, 2 closed. One open doorway led into what was unmistakably Kelsey's bedroom, where about 6 people sat scattered between the bed and the floor, engaged in low, intimate conversation. The other open door revealed an empty bathroom, its door wedged wide. The remaining two doors were shut. I lingered in the hallway, listening. Behind one closed door, the muffled tones of two people speaking could be heard. From the other came a sound I knew instantly, a laugh I had heard countless times. It was Hannah's, and the blurred, slurred edges to her voice left no doubt she was heavily intoxicated. I stood frozen outside that door, feeling each second stretch far longer than it really was, though in truth, only half a minute passed. At last I turned the handle and stepped inside. The space was small, more suited to a home office or spare bedroom. A desk was pushed against one wall, a short bookcase filled a corner, and on the opposite side sat a worn, sagging couch that looked like it had passed through several college apartments. Hannah was sprawled there. She wasn't completely naked, but it was close. The black dress she'd worn when leaving our apartment was pushed up around her waist. Her bra hung undone, one strap slipping down her arm. The neat hairstyle she had left home with had collapsed into loose, sweat-damp strands clinging to her forehead. On top of her was a man I didn't recognize, his hands in places no one else's should have been. Both of them were so locked into each other and so drunk that it took them a few seconds to realize I was there. Hannah noticed first. Her face flickered through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, then recognition, then shock, and finally something almost like relief. She said nothing. Neither did the man. Neither did I. My eyes met hers, watching her fight to bring me into focus, then shifted to him, reading the uncertainty in his face as he tried to decide whether I was about to hit him. It couldn't have lasted more than 3 seconds. 3 seconds in which 4 years of marriage, every fight about boundaries, every argument over trust, and months of my own quiet suspicions crystallized into an undeniable reality. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment lapse. Hannah had made a deliberate choice, lying to me, slipping out of our apartment, driving across the city, walking into this house, climbing these stairs, and step by step, choosing to end up here with him. I turned without a word and closed the door behind me. I have no memory of going down the stairs, crossing the living room, or stepping outside. I can't recall getting into my car or making the drive home. What I do remember is sitting alone in our guest room, replaying the scene in my mind. My thoughts kept circling back to the small details. I remembered every talk we'd had about trust, every promise she'd made after the bachelorette party incident, every time she had called me controlling or insecure when I voiced discomfort over her behavior at parties. I wasn't controlling. I wasn't insecure. I had been right, and instead of calling anyone or making a plan, I just sat there in the dark. A hollow, unfamiliar emptiness settled over me. At 1:15 a.m., I heard the front door open. She came in slowly, as if bracing for me to be waiting, which I was. I stepped into the living room. She still looked disheveled, though it was obvious she'd tried to fix her hair and makeup during the drive. Her dress was rumpled, her heels dangling from her hand. She sank into a chair across from me. Silence hung between us until she broke down, sobbing. She began explaining, insisting it wasn't what it seemed, that nothing really happened, that they had just been talking before things got carried away. She blamed the alcohol, claimed her judgment had been clouded, swore she never intended for it to happen. I let her speak until she had no words left. Then I told her our marriage was over. 3 days later, I moved out. Hannah begged me to reconsider, to try counseling, to give her a chance to show she could be the wife I deserved. She promised never to drink again, never to go to another party, never to see Kelsey or those friends. But the real problem wasn't alcohol or parties or her social circle. The problem was that she could look me in the eye, agree to a boundary, and then deliberately break it, lying about where she was and who she was with. Faced with a choice between protecting our marriage and indulging herself, she always chose herself. Once the trust was gone, nothing could be rebuilt. The divorce was finalized months later. Since we were renters, I left her the apartment. I took the larger portion of our savings, having been the primary earner, and we split the rest evenly. Through mutual friends, I learned the man was named Bryce, a friend of Kelsey's, whom Hannah had met that very night. Witnesses said they'd spent the evening drinking and flirting before disappearing upstairs. There hadn't been a hidden, long-term affair, just a stranger she decided was worth destroying our marriage for. In the months afterward, she tried to reach me, texts full of apologies, emails asking to talk, voicemails telling me how much she missed me. I ignored them all. There was nothing left to say. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gone to that party. If I'd waited until she came home and confronted her then, could she have lied her way out of it? Would I have believed her? I'm grateful I'll never have to find out. As painful as it was, that night gave me clarity. It showed me who Hannah really was when she thought no one was watching, and that was not a woman I could spend my life with. When I opened that door, I didn't just catch her cheating. I saw the end of our marriage, the collapse of my trust, and the start of whatever came next. The legal process lasted 6 months, but in reality, it ended in those 3 seconds I stood in that doorway, watching the woman I'd promised my life to choose a stranger over everything we had built. I have never once regretted walking away. That's where the story ends. Share your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, you might want to check out the other stories on this channel. Until next time, my friend.